From WKGC Public Media in Panama City, this is ReelTalk, the place where you can join the cinematic conversations frame by frame each week. Today we are reviewing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I'm half of your normal hosting team, Brian R.L. Terry. Julie Film Commissioner Gordon is still recovering from surgery. My returning guest today is film critic and award-winning musician Gino Sassani, and he and I are joined by fellow film critic Adam Donato. All three of us are members of the Critics Association of Central Florida. Gino is a film and television critic based in Tampa and the senior editor at the website Upcoming Dis. Welcome back to the show, Gino.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And Adam is a contributor to the website Disappointment Media, creator of Hard Reviews, and the host or co-host of the Adam and Steve Show on YouTube. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Well, thank you for having me. Movies are dreams.
Wonderful. Glad to have you guys both on the show today for what I'm sure will be a dynamic discussion. Again, listeners, we are reviewing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning this hour. So if movies are your thing, give us a ring, 850-772-6803. You can also send us a message on the WKGC Facebook page or email us at wkgcnews@gulfcoast.edu. Before we get into our opinions on the movie, Adam, you follow the box office and audience metric beats much more closely than I do. So can you describe for our listeners the box office performance up to this point for the MI franchise and how it compares to the Final Reckoning's box office performance? And if you can, adjust those numbers for inflation for us.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how the franchise has changed over time and how the box office has changed with it. Obviously, those first three films kind of feel like their own section compared to from Ghost Protocol on. I mean, I know Ghost Protocol was Brad Bird, but from then on we had Christopher McQuarrie, so we had a type of linearness with the franchise. But we usually stay at a pretty comfortable, like low 200 million domestic, or a high, like 100s, like in the 180, 190 range, peaking with Fallout where we had the 220 domestically. Now, obviously, since this franchise has gone on for so long, one thing that we've had to deal with is the real world coming into play. So, for example, Dead Reckoning Part 1 took quite a substantial hit compared to Fallout, Rogue Nation, and Ghost Protocol, not only because we're still in the, like, after effects of how streaming and how COVID changed movie theaters, but also if we remember, the box office landscape heavily impacts how these movies perform. And Dead Reckoning Part 1 came out 1 week before Barbenheimer, which is just so obnoxiously, and especially since Oppenheimer has a very similar target demographic. That was a very difficult thing. Now this year, it comes up against Lilo and Stitch, which, you know, different, more family-oriented demographic, and I'm sure Tom Cruise was licking his chops when he saw how much Snow White failed earlier this year, and hopefully that meant that these live-action remakes are losing steam, and when Tom Cruise goes head-to-head, even though it is somewhat different demographics, still, though, Lilo and Stitch absolutely dominated. But I have a very strong confidence in Final Reckoning going forward. Even though it did have a 57% drop from week 1 to week 2, you'd hope that'd be a little bit closer to 40. 60 is kind of the range where it's tracking not to do that great over a long period of time. But luckily, word of mouth with this one should be great. And Ballerina has been pushed back super hardcore, and that's a similar type of demographic they're trying to catch. So we're not expecting any real competition until F1 from former Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski comes out in late June. But I do anticipate this beating out the box office total of Dead Reckoning Part 1, but maybe not reaching the heights that something like Fallout or even Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol did.
And you mentioned Kosinski directing both Top Gun Maverick and the upcoming F1. Real quickly, do you feel that individuals flocked to both the Dead Reckoning and we'll keep it to Final Reckoning, flocked to Final Reckoning in the way that Tom Cruise was able to drive them to the cinema for Top Gun Maverick? I know it's two different movies, two different genres, however, both with the same movie star. and I'd argue the last living great classical, by classical definition anyway, movie star. So he was able to drive folks to the cinema for Top Gun Maverick. Do you feel that this, at least for the time being, final chapter in the Mission Impossible franchise, do you feel Cruise was able to serve as that driving factor for audiences to the cinema like he was able to do just a few years ago with Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, I think the major difference between these two franchises, because both of you are right, Tom Cruise in the leading role, he's a professional movie star. Both are centered around real life stunts, because what Top Gun Maverick, we're actually in the planes.
Yeah.
And obviously Mission Impossible is headlined by a huge stunt every single time. I think that the edge that Top Gun Maverick has over this Mission Impossible movie or any Mission Impossible movie is, number one, a lack of franchise fatigue. I think that Mission Impossible has built a standard of quality over the course of their franchise, and we've had, a few films over the past decade now, whereas Top Gun was a sequel that was decades in the making. But not only that, but also the patriotism that comes with Top Gun Maverick, I think, did wonders for it at the domestic box office, and that's just something that we don't get with Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible, we're saving the world. Top Gun, we're with the military and military pride. You know what I mean?
Hey, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. I love how you're able to look at all of that data and able to interpret it for us, because that's something in all these years I've been reviewing films that I've not paid as much attention to. So thank you very much for bringing that to the show today. In a statement or two, you guys, where are you both on the movie? What was your initial reaction, and perhaps where you are now? Gino, we'll go to you first.
Okay, well, actually, as far as the actual film's concerned, this is it's a visually stunning film. I mean, you go in there, you're taking your amusement park ride, you're going on the roller coaster, whatever, and you're getting your money's worth. And there are a couple of particular scenes that definitely want to get to today. But the script bothered me a little bit. It seemed like a retread of the first one, because we had the same elements. We've got two parts of something that we have to put together again. First one is the key. This one is this poison pill. And, some of the same stunts. How many times can we watch Tom Cruise hanging from the plane, in this case a biplane? I love the underwater scene far more because it was much more original, much more clever. And that's stunning. That was my favorite scene in the film. I thought that was so well done.
So I would suffice it to say, you would say more. It's for you, as much as you enjoyed it, very much spectacle over narrative. Is that what I'm getting? Is that what I'm getting from you?
Yeah, I think this time that's true. Yeah.
Okay. So Adam, what say you? What was your initial reaction, and if it's changed, where are you now on the film?
I definitely want to echo that sentiment about action over narrative here, because this franchise, I've seen all of them just about once, maybe a couple of them multiple times. And the reason why this is not a franchise I actively gravitate towards is because it's action man saving the world. And that's great, but there's not really that much there to chew on. And I think the problem with this film in particular is we're at, a hair under 3 hours. I think it's just like 10 minutes under. 2:45,
I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's so much. That's so long. And then so much of this, especially since it's a part 2. Technically, I know it doesn't have the moniker anymore of Dead Reckoning Part 2. But we have so much to catch people involved, not only from the previous movie, but from the entire franchise as a whole. So I do think that weighs it down. I will say, though, that more so than how that bothers me, the stunts that Tom Cruise is able to do is obviously the number one attraction and is worth the price of admission alone. The two-plane sequence where he tries to transfer through, that's the best action sequence of the year, and it will be. This is the premier action movie of the summer and of the year. It is an absolute shame that they're not doing the stunt award until next year. It just feels like the honorary Mission Impossible award. But yeah, no, I think that this is a very, very, very good movie. It's a very fun time at the theaters this summer, and I would definitely recommend it to people.
And when I left the movie, I was what a picture. We all know that scene from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What a picture. And so that was my reaction to the film. And I've only seen it the one time. I want to see upon a subsequent rewatch of the movie if it changes any. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I felt it to be an exhilarating conclusion to a 29-year journey. It's a shame we didn't get to 30. It's like, could we have waited one more year? That way could have been a 30-year journey. But I concede to both your points narratively. I found the screenplay had some shortcomings, particularly at that very clunky start to the first act. But thankfully, I'd say after about 20 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes, it does seem to find its rhythm, and then it pays off some very strong connections in earlier entries, particularly the original Mission Impossible and Mission Impossible 3. In retrospect, one might, be able to read Mission Impossible 3 as the most important Mission Impossible movie with the way this narrative plays out. And since the movie's still in theaters, want to stay away from spoilers as much as possible. But I feel that this is a true cinematic spectacle, tailor-made for the big screen. And once again, Tom Cruise proves that he remains the definitive movie star. And I say that, and I always preface it within the classical sense, like Golden Age Hollywood, he definitive movie star out there. So I like how, to varying degrees, we're all definitely high on the movie in terms of its entertainment value. Very little, perhaps, in the narrative that we have here. So in the conversations that you've had with the critics and with your friends, kind of what are you guys getting from individuals? What's the word on the street, so to speak? What are folks saying they're liking about the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, or maybe some things they're not liking about it? Kind of what's the pulse out there right now?
Well, I think that the big thing that you have to look out for is that I think there's a lot more, a lot more people waiting for this thing, a lot more expectation, because originally this thing was going to follow within months.
Yeah.
When this whole idea came out, and then it's been, 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that worked for the film's advantage, I believe, because there was a lot of expectation. There was a lot of anxiety waiting to see it. There were a lot of people that couldn't wait to see it. And I think that's why we got a pretty big boost in the opening box office, and I think that will continue for a while, because, as you said, there's not a lot of competition quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ballerina coming up will probably be its biggest test for the competition at the box office. But and they go there for the stunts, and you're right that the biplane one's one of the greatest ones. But I got to tell you, we have seen him hang in the air in every one of these movies. My favorite is the underwater scene. I got to tell you, the way they did that with the water, moving as the sub was moving,
mm-hmm.
I thought that was the most original and compelling stunt, because that's when I was on the edge of my seat. The plane, I'm like, yeah, he hangs from planes all the time. But this underwater stuff, I thought to me, that was one of the best set pieces, and between the effects and the action, that was one of the best things I've seen out of the whole franchise. I love that a lot.
I gotta meet your point there, Gino. The underwater sequence that was completely unnerving. I found myself making sure that I still had oxygen supply around me. Like I felt that I was right there. And this claustrophobic environment that is underwater, incredibly intense, and as much fun as the biplane sequences at the in our showdown. I think a lot of most of the tension buildup was also in that underwater scene for me, because we've only seen something like that one other time. And was it Ghost Protocol or Rogue Nation? And when we were
when he was going to get the chip or something, he was going to change out the chip.
Do you remember which one it was, Adam? Was it Ghost Protocol or Rogue Nation, where he's getting the computer chip in the water? I just don't remember offhand which one it was, but we've only had that one other underwater sequence. What about you, Adam? Between our underwater sequence and our biplane sequence at the end, which for you was the most intense?
I would definitely take the biplane sequence, but I do have a lot of respect for the underwater sequence. It really reminded me of, like, The Abyss. Like, I really do wonder if Tom Cruise watched Way of Water and was really inspired by James. James Cameron's obsessed with the underwater sequences, and so I think it's cool to see it in a different environment because I think that points that people seem to be having about the franchise kind of speaks to how active a decision it is for them to like end here if they do decide to end here, because people are becoming. I mean, I don't want to say spoiled, you know what I mean, but we are. We're like we've seen it before. We've seen him do this before, and it's still like such a marvelous thing that he's able to accomplish. I just think if it was in a more digestible runtime, then people would be a little bit more satisfied. Because I think that's one thing that's hurting the box office too. Because by being almost 3 hours long, you're not able to occupy as many screens. Like Lilo and Stitch is in half the auditoriums in the theater house, you know, whereas Mission Impossible only has a pretty standard amount of showtimes because, and especially when you have to prioritize the higher formats in IMAX, which I do, please desperately go watch this movie in the biggest screen that you can.
That is how we saw it.
To make the movie. But it really is a spectacle, and both scenes are massively impressive and the big takeaway from the film.
It's when we come back from our break here in a little bit, I want to touch on some of our favorite scenes and some other impressions we have of the movie. But here, before we go into our break, I'd like to know what your guys' thoughts are on some of the themes in the movie. One of which I want to touch on a little bit later, but here before the break, Ethan Hunt, all throughout the movies, particularly some of these latter films, specifically the one we're talking, in particular one that we're talking about today, he continues to stand up for what is right, for the greater good, even when it's the most unpopular stance or opinion to hold. He and his team desire to destroy the entity so no one has access to the power, so that way the entity does not destroy the world. Of course, Gabriel wants it to destroy the world, remake it in their image, in his image. I'd say the final reckoning forces us to look inward and ask ourselves how we would react when faced with a world on the brink of disaster. Could we resist giving into our innate self-centered nature, even when it's disguised as the most logical choice? Or would we give in? And I think this movie challenges humanity, challenges us to always hold on to hope, even when it appears to be impossible. So what do you guys take from the film's thesis or theme on the cost of standing up for the greater good?
Well, it's obviously a great cause, but remember also that villains never see themselves as villains. So I think you look at the human nature thing, I think each of us would think and honestly truly believe that, you know what, with that power in my hands, I can make things better. I'm not a bad guy. I can create things better. So I think that him having that opposite, idea, it sets him up as a different kind of hero. And I think that's really great. But is it realistic? Because, like I said, I think everyone believes that if you had power, of course you wouldn't use it for, all these nefarious purposes. Of course you would do good for everyone. But that's what every villain believes.
Adam, what about you? What do you say to this topic?
It's interesting that the last part in the franchise got shafted by Oppenheimer at the box office, because I feel like a lot of the themes that we're talking about right now, especially, have to do with Oppenheimer, like the responsibility of having the weight of the world on your shoulders, these huge monumental things that could destroy us all, and what individuals are responsible for that and hold power in these situations. And I think that this film really, like, he's kind of inhuman. He's better than us. You know what I mean? Ethan Hunt. He is this higher figure than us. And with the quote that you're talking about where he says, like, for those that we, like, will never meet and the ones that we hold close, he very holds himself off from these things. And he's very removed from these, like, things that do make us human. So that's probably why he feels like he's able to make these calls, because he isn't as susceptible to these, personal appeals like us regular people are. He's way more disciplined and responsible than us all. He's the hero that we should all strive to be more like.
Should he have paused? Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll come back to you, Gino, right after the break here. You're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. My guests today are film critics Gino Sassani and Adam Donato, and we're talking about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. You can join us by calling 850-772-6803 or send us a message on the WKGC Facebook page or email us at wkgcnews@gulfcoast.edu. We'll be right back after a short break to continue our discussion. Keep the dial or stream right here on 90.7 WKGC.
People are who build community. The self-starters, the friendly neighbors, the ambitious workers. And that's exactly who our members are. We're PCU. And with us, banking is made better. So whether you need a rewards checking account, financial products that assist with travel, easy business loans, or affordable auto loans, come see us so we can build the community together. Panhandle Credit Union. Banking made better. Federally insured by NCUA. Equal housing lender.
People in Asheville, North Carolina are still picking up the pieces after Hurricane Helene ripped through last year, damaging or destroying more than 100,000 homes.
There are a lot of people living in their cars. There's a lot of people about to be evicted, and we can't build enough affordable housing fast enough.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, responding to a housing crisis with another hurricane season now underway on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Weekdays at 3 p.m. on WKGC.
Welcome back. You're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. You are with half of your hosting team, Brian R.L. Terry. My guests today are film critics Gino Sassani and Adam Donato, and we're talking about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Before the break, we were talking about some of the ideas, some of the theses and themes that this movie has about standing up for the greater good. And, Gino, I had to cut you off right before the break, but I want to make sure we get to whatever thought was on your mind before we move on. So what else would you like to say on that particular topic?
Well, it's Adam's thought about how he, he's almost an inhuman, that he's above us as far as being willing to make the sacrifice. But you know what, and this is a problem I have with the script. You know what would have been better, though? Doubt. I think that he should have had, somewhere towards the finale, he should have had this moment of doubt and then overcome the moment of doubt and did what was best for everybody, because every human being would have that. Before I do this, I have a chance to rule the world. Okay, I'm not going to do it, but everyone has a moment of doubt, and I think that would have added that humanity to the mix and made his extraordinary things extraordinary. Because if he really is just an extraordinary person, then naturally he can hang from planes and stuff. But if he's human like us and he has those doubts, well, then that makes that so much more meaningful.
Are you thinking maybe something along the lines of a Mount Doom in Return of the King, in which we are looking at the One Ring? You're like, you know what? No one else has been able to handle the power of this ring, but I can, handle the power of this ring. Or it's kind of an internal conflict along those lines. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, exactly. And it didn't have to be anything long. It didn't have to be anything he did. Just even in his face, just having him show some momentary doubt, I think would have been so much more impactful than the fact that, of course, he did it.
Yeah. So the movie certainly has a lot of memorable scenes. We've talked about a couple of them already, the underwater, the biplane, and we can elaborate more on those. But specifically here, I'd love to hear some of your guys' favorite scenes and why those scenes stuck out to you. Adam, we'll go over to you first.
Oh, yes. One scene I would love to talk about, I believe this is like right as before he goes into the underwater sequence and he tells them what his plan is. A standout performance, this very small little standout performance for me, is from Trammell Tillman. If you guys watch the Severance show, you may recognize him from that. But his line delivery with Ethan and just that whole entire scene, he is so fantastic. He is so charismatic. That was definitely my favorite part of the film, because I feel like this being the final act, the final chapter of this franchise, decently serious franchise, not overly good, but they are usually pretty fun, though, more fun than, like, light fun than this is. Yeah. And so any moments of that lightness were welcomed with open arms. So that scene and that specifically that little, supporting role were my favorite.
Sweet. Gino, what about you?
Well, I mean, above the submarine scene, which was hands down my favorite. I like the scenes in the cave when, once again, we get a ticking time bomb. And I think this one was 90 minutes. I mean, not 90, it was 20 minutes, and it took 30 minutes to film time. Like we talked about that in the last one.
Yes,
but that 15-minute one took half an hour. But I did like that, because that was really one of the few times in this film where we did have the team working together. One of my problems was Cruise was alone a lot in this particular one. And I love that was the ultimate bring them together, dealing with loss that we won't get into because we don't do spoilers, but also the fact that you got a hurt member. You have, again, the guys who were trying to get you agreeing, yeah, we're going to stick up for you this time. And so I love that. I thought that was the ultimate for Mission Impossible, that we had the team together for perhaps the last time, rushing against that clock and trying to do something again together. And so I really did love the camaraderie that happens there.
I think my favorite sequence of scenes is probably the underwater one, just because of it being more or less novel for the franchise, and how I found myself gasping for breath, figuratively, but the feeling was still there, because it was spending such a long time underwater. And then, of course, I also have to reconcile that with what is the Guinness Book of World Records for how long you can hold your breath and at what temperature. So we got not only the lack of oxygen going on, but we've got these frigid temperatures as well. And he was able to communicate that incredibly well, so much so that when he uses the knife, I think it is, maybe the Bowie knife, to cut open his wetsuit, where he gets that initial rush of ice cold water, I think I felt shivers going up and down my spine as well. So I loved how it was playing on a lot of different feelings. The aerial sequences, which aren't new to the franchise, but I say this is probably the longest one, was just nothing short of mind-boggling. And it's even more mind-boggling when you look at this is what was, like when you do the on set versus in the film. We've all seen those memes on Instagram, Facebook, or other social media. And when you look at, the only difference between what I could see with the naked eye in real life and the film is the painting out of the safety harness. Otherwise, everything else pretty much exactly like it is. The film is a direct reflection of what is going on there on this aerial set. And I don't think you were going to see anybody else, at least in the near future, who is that committed to stunt work as Tom Cruise. And so I love those scenes. Something that you mentioned, Adam, if only in kind of passing, was the fun factor. I've read some other reviews and just following the commentary that's running on Twitter, that some felt that this installment lacks some of the fun factor of the previous installments. And so did you guys find the Final Reckoning to be as fun as some of the others, or do you feel it was lacking some of that fun/lightheartedness, which is part of the Mission Impossible franchise? Where are you guys on that, the idea of the level of fun factor in this one?
I had a ball. Like I said before, it's still a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. It's still exhilarating. It's still fun. Even if, like I said, it got a little derivative, I think, at times. I think that if you're going in there to take an amusement park ride, I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all.
Adam, what about you?
I actually really like what Gino had to say earlier as kind of like an answer to this question. So he brought up how Tom Cruise is alone for a lot of this movie, and that makes sense. It's the final chapter. The stakes are the highest they could be. The world is going to end, and it's always Ethan Hunt's fault. Yeah. And it's like heavy type stuff. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of the fun and the humor usually comes from the banter within this group of, like, friends. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's a problem I had. Like, without spoiling anything, there's a scene later on in this movie where the members of this team are kind of like, in a circle doing the nod, like, yeah, kind of a thing. And I didn't feel the emotional weight that I felt like I should have in that scene, because several of the characters in that, like, group in that team, I was like, we just met them one movie ago. You know what I mean? Like, you want to build this up, like, not to compare it to the Fast and Furious franchise, because I feel like those are, while very similar, I feel like that's a franchise that's trying to do something very different. That sense of family that you get in that franchise is very different, like completely opposite from what we're getting here. It is a family, but it's also a lot more cool, surface level, like, I don't know, it's not as like, I love you, you know what I mean, kind of a thing. I don't know. So I felt like that didn't hit me as hard at the end because I really felt like they wanted to be like, can you believe this team went through it all? And I'm like, well, yeah, it was just, we just met them. We just met them a movie ago.
Yeah.
That's why I like the cave scene, of course, because that really is the chance you get to see them working as a team again, kind of.
So you're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm joined today by film critics Gino Sassani and Adam Donato. We are talking about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Join the conversation, 850-772-6803. The cast chemistry has always been really strong in these movies. Even Mission Impossible 2. I won't knock its cast chemistry. It's maybe on the weaker side, but it's still there. So we've got great cast of characters, wonderful chemistry between the actors, bringing them to life for the screen. And referencing our show a couple of weeks ago, Gino, you and I were talking that there was going to be a death. Now, listeners, I'm not going to spoil, who dies. However, I'd be remiss if we did not talk about the power of death and that recurring theme throughout the Mission Impossible franchise. So, Gino, without revealing who, was the individual that you had hypothesized would be the one to die when we last spoke, was that the individual that met their demise in this movie?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I really do. And when we talked about the getting together, I think that emotional impact of having that happen during the rest of the film, I think fills in for the fact that, okay, Tom Cruise is all alone, because of course now he isn't alone. He's avenging his family member basically's death, and they're all dealing with that while trying to save the world at the same time. So yeah, I would have suspected that. It was either him or another character, and I think that's the one. I think it was the right one to kill off, actually.
So, Adam, again, without revealing who, did you go into this movie thinking, okay, there's going to be another death? Because we had, at this point, it's been a few years, we had Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa Faust, whom I still really miss, wish she was in this movie. But, she passed away. And, Gino, you made a great point as to that was the death probably least wanted and least expected, which is why it was so powerful in the previous movie. Adam, did you go into this thinking that we would have another main character die? And if so, the individual that did die, did it match up with what you had maybe predicted would happen in the movie?
I did not put much thought into whether or not I thought someone would die. I guess you could figure that someone will. It's the big final chapter. But I really like the decision that they ended up doing because, especially that scene happens earlier on in the film, so it really sets up the emotional stakes. And the performance from the actor or actress in the scene really proves that was the correct person, that was the correct heartstring to tug on. I really like the performance in that moment. It really allows us, in a high-flying, fast-paced action movie, it's nice to have a scene where we really get down to the emotional root of these characters and what the stakes of what they have going on are.
And so, do you feel that with The Final Reckoning having more scenes with Ethan Hunt by himself compared to some of the other movies, do you feel that helped the experience of the overall film, or would you have liked to have seen more teamwork with which we're more familiar with some of with all of the previous movies? So where are you on our character mix in this movie as a whole? Adam, how about you? We'll go to you first.
I definitely would have liked to see him more with the team, but like I said, seeing as it is the finale, seeing that this is his final chapter, I understand why we need to isolate him to explore his, internal conflict and his story. So I'm fine with it, but when ranking this amongst the rest of the entries in the franchise, I will opt for one of the more team-oriented movies, just because that's what I go to these more for. I like having this group of friends that with good chemistry, they're having a good time, but it's tense, it's fun. But yeah, no, give me the team.
Yeah. So, Gino, what about you?
I agree. You need the team, although I think that they compensated a little bit by giving us the loss. But I'll tell you what thing I do disagree with. I do not believe for a second this is the final Mission Impossible movie.
Okay.
That ending, and without talking about what happens at the ending, that's just saying, see you for now, see you soon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That ending to me spoke, we're gonna let it sit a little while, but we're back. We're coming back. I don't believe for a second this is the last one.
So
with Tom?
Go ahead.
Like, do you think Tom's coming back to do another one, or do you think that they're just going to do another one with, like, new characters?
No, I think they will, because I think that ending where I think one of the, ways you can read it is that they're saying goodbye. I think they're actually saying we're still a team.
So I'm more probably with Adam on this one, Gino. I agree with you in that this is not the last Mission Impossible movie. However, I do think this is the last Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt in a leading role. I think we're going to, in the future, still have Mission Impossible movies, even with some of our same characters, but I don't think that we're going to have Ethan Hunt, or if we do have Ethan Hunt, it's going to be a cameo. I don't see anybody else playing Ethan Hunt. If we have Ethan Hunt, it's Tom Cruise. But I do see him. So are you then suggesting that moving forward with Mission Impossible, that you still see Ethan Hunt as our central character?
At least for another movie, yeah.
You do? Okay.
I really now that doesn't mean that they won't try to change the formula somewhat and maybe go backwards a little bit on the stunt stuff and find some other focus, some other way to, center things. So yeah, maybe Tom Cruise won't do, but I mean, he's not slowing down. He's planning on doing another Maverick movie. He's talking about Days of Thunder again. He's showing me no point where he's thinking about, well, it's time to slow down from doing this. So I think Hunt will be back. Yeah, that's my prediction.
Okay. So Adam, what about you? Do you think that we'll see him at all? I take it you don't see him as the lead, as do I. But do you see this current kind of iteration of the IMF? Do you see it continuing just with Ethan Hunt, either not there in a different role? What do you say to that?
I would like to call back to something you said earlier in the conversation to answer this question. You mentioned how Mission Impossible 3 is maybe one of the most important films in the franchise. And I think the thing that makes that film stand out in a way that if they are going to continue the franchise, I'd be welcoming if they did focus on this aspect, is Philip Seymour Hoffman is the villain in Mission Impossible 3 is amazing. Yeah. And that's one thing that's crazy about this franchise is that it's not known for its huge, awesome villains. Whereas, like, a James Bond movie, you could point out, oh, that's the one with this guy as the bad guy. Yeah. That's the one with this guy as the bad guy. So I would be very welcoming to another installment in this franchise if Ethan Hunt is going to return. I wouldn't mind if it was in somewhat of a villainous capacity. I don't know how you're going to swing that. But I know that one thing that bothers me with Tom Cruise is he's doing the same thing a lot. And one of his best roles is Collateral, where he plays a bad guy, and it's a really awesome role. So maybe something about, I'm spitballing here at the moment, but like they do like to have like meta-contextual themes about cinema as a whole in these movies. So what if you had something to say about rebooting a franchise, like doing a requel, a legacy sequel to a franchise, bringing back a Tom Cruise, and realizing that the point is we have to let go of what came before us and move on with a new team. And because Tom Cruise's character, Ethan Hunt, is holding on so long, that's, a problem, because that's a huge problem with these major franchises. Even people in this movie are upset about a little bit too much fan service. Okay, we brought back that guy. Okay, there's a reference to that, and some of it feels hammy. That's just a spitball idea, but with such a big brand like this, you have to make, and within a decade, there will be another movie, I'm sure, with a new cast.
Well, I don't know about the new cast, but they did exactly what you suggested in the first movie. And that bothered me, though, when they brought Peter Graves back and turned him into a bad guy. I don't know, that actually put me off on the franchise until I started to see it improve. I was disappointed that they did that, and I think I'd be just as disappointed to see Hunt turn into a bad guy. I mean, the guy just saved the world when he could have had all this power. I don't see how you turn that guy into a villain.
Yeah, I'd say I'm certainly not opposed to having more Mission Impossible movies and seeing Ethan Hunt in a different role, but I'm afraid I have to go with Gino on this one, Adam. I don't think I want to see any character assassination with Ethan Hunt, even if he was more of an anti-hero and not your villain.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see when if and when the next movies come out. But listeners, you're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. My guests today are film critics Gino Sassani and Adam Donato, and we are talking Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. You can join the discussion live on air by calling 850-772-6803. We'd love to hear your comments on the movie, or send us a message on the WKGC Facebook page, or email us at wkgcnews@gulfcoast.edu. We'll be right back after a short break to continue our discussion, and we'll wrap it up and then move into some other things. So keep the dial or stream right here on 90.7 WKGC.
The Final Symphony by Jean Sibelius evolves from a quiet opening to a warm, life-affirming ending 21 minutes later, and it goes in one unbroken, weightless stream. The Symphony No. 7 by Sibelius in concert in Zurich on the next Performance Today from 8 p.m.
Weekdays at 6 p.m. on WKGC.
Hi, I'm WKGC's Tom Hoots. Please join me Tuesday at noon when we welcome Gene Mitchell to Sound Sessions here on WKGC 90.7 FM.
Greetings from Florida. I wish you were here. Florida is beautiful every day of the year.
Welcome back. You're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. You are with half of your normal hosting team, Ryan R.L. Terry. Julie is still recovering from surgery. My guests today are film critics Gino Sassani and Adam Donato, and we're talking Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning in theaters nationwide. As we begin to close out our discussion on what is billed and expected to be anyway, the last Mission Impossible movie starring Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, I'd like to talk about an observation I made and like to know what you guys think of it. Adam, you mentioned this quote earlier in a slightly different context, but you mentioned it earlier. The IMF oath reads, "We live and die in the shadows for those we hold close and for those we never meet." And in this movie, I don't think it's merely referring to the covert operatives and spycraft from the engineers and how they carry out their missions behind the scenes of life. But I'm all but certain that it's a wink or nod to the audience, to us, referencing the cast and crew that make this movie for those they know, their friends and their family, and everyone else out there in the world that they may likely never meet. There's probably no other working actor out there, in my opinion anyway, that is so much a vocal champion of cinema like Tom Cruise. So what do you guys make of this oath in that context? Did you get that at all? Maybe I'm out there, by myself. But that definitely hit me while I'm watching it. It was like, as I'm watching the movie, not even in retrospect, that is what I thought that McQuarrie and Cruise and the whole team were saying to me, the audience member. So what do you guys make of this oath and how it's used in the movie? Gino?
Well, I don't think I quite agree. I mean, yeah, I get the point, but of course the way he's saying it, you're not supposed to, he's doing it in the shadows, you never see him there. Well, of course he's not doing it in the shadows because he's got 70mm IMAX cameras on him the entire time that he's doing these things. But I understand what you're saying. I understand that, there is a little nod to the audience about, we're doing this because we have people out there, that count on these, that want these. And I remember his rant during COVID. I don't know if you guys remember the rant.
Oh, I remember.
Studios call me every day. I saved this industry. So I don't think Tom Cruise lives in the shadows, but I get your point.
And so, Adam, what do you make of that the oath and my interpretation anyway of like it has a meaning within the narrative of the movie, but this is like the subtextual meaning that I took away from it. What did you think of it?
I think that the Tom Cruise cinema propaganda machine was firing on all cylinders. Mind you, I am the target demographic for this message as well, because I buy it hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, yes, he is saving movies. He is doing it for us. He's doing the dirty work so we can enjoy it. And so, like, I view him as this. It's funny we have a Superman movie coming out this year because real life cinema Superman is Tom Cruise. So I could definitely vibe with what you're saying about how this movie, this line, that oath, not only speaks to the themes of the movie itself, but of Tom Cruise's perspective and initiative when it comes to filmmaking and the landscape of cinema. You know, you see him eating popcorn everywhere, supporting all these other movies and all these other actors. He really is like the godfather of cinema right now, and it's a beautiful thing.
So are you saying he is our new Avenger? Are these our new Avengers, this group? this group right here. You guys probably saw this interview. Gino, you and I touched on it a couple of weeks ago where he was asked from a reporter, this is right after the president issues the executive order or the proclamation about the tariffs on the foreign films. It's quick and dirty version foreign films. And so then after that, he is asked from a reporter about that. And his reaction is one of, we're here to talk about the movie. And then, very quickly the reporter says, okay, well then, comes up with another question. And I love that. And I think the Tom Cruise that we have on screen is just a variation of the Tom Cruise that we have in real life. I think that is him. Eats, sleep, breathes cinema and wants to focus on cinema. And it's something that has always intrigued me, particularly in an era in which we, whether you want it or you don't want it, like it or not, that actors and other celebrities, too, are sometimes all too willing to offer up their personal opinions, particularly with a question like this one. But he's like, nope, we're here to talk about the movie. And I just love how that is his approach to cinema. Did you guys catch that interview or read that in an article? What did you think of his response and what that says about Tom Cruise, the actor?
Well, I think that the important thing is he's right. I am so sick and tired of politics and all these other things being mixed in with my entertainment. I'm going there to escape all that. I'm going there to be entertained. I don't care. I really don't care what somebody believes. I don't care who somebody voted for, who somebody doesn't like. I think he's right, and I do support him 100% with that because, yes, this is the movie business. It's an escapism. Don't bog me down with reality, man. That's the thing I'm here trying to get rid of.
Yeah. So, Adam, what did you make of his comments to that question?
I believe that it's absolutely calculated. Like everything, I talked about the Tom Cruise propaganda machine. Everything is made so that you go see this movie on the biggest screen possible. He is entirely focused on the way that this movie is succeeding. It's funny because I do like watching a lot of these like cast interviews, like whether it's on the red carpet or they're sitting down. Yeah. And I watched one where it was like a Japanese cinema reporter, and they were asking the members of the cast, oh, what's your favorite Japanese movie? And everyone kind of had their answers here and there. But Tom Cruise is just like, can't name one. Just I can't disrespect any of them. But I'll tell you what, you should go watch this movie. This is my favorite.
No Akira Kurosawa.
Not a real person.
So.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, Patrick Bateman, the character from American Psycho. Christian Bale, modeled it after Tom Cruise because he's such a good-looking, personable guy full of personality. He has it. You know what I mean? But there's something dead in there. It's almost like he's too perfect, almost like a Terminator, Oh,
my goodness. I think this is a good place to wrap up our discussion here, because I'd like to get to some other things that we've been watching and give you guys an opportunity to share with our listeners where they can find out more information on you before our hour is up today. So just in a statement or two, in a nutshell, what are your closing thoughts on Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning? Adam, and then we'll go to Gino.
Yeah, one thing I didn't really get to talk about too much was what the film has to say about AI and putting the power in human hands.
Yes.
I mean, that last film is so ahead of its time now, like looking back at it, because AI is such a dominant part of the conversation about just the world, the larger world in general, making videos or, audio of people saying things, and, the way that this causes confusion and doubt in our society, and the misinformation, the quote-unquote fake news, because every scene in this movie is going up to a person like, that's what the entity wants you to think. You have to trust me. I'm a human being. Look at me. My skin. It's real. But no, I again, that's another aspect of the Tom Cruise cinema propaganda machine that I love so much about this movie. It is real. There are real stunts. He's on that plane.
Yeah.
Sure, it's too long. Sure, it's too bloated. But it's not the most fun movie when the premier action set pieces are happening. I love action, man. I live on the world. I would like it to be saved. And goddamn, Ethan Hunt's going to give us a good one. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. I wish we had spent a little bit more time on AI. I think, Gino, you and I talked a bit more about AI in the previous episodes. The listeners, you can go back and listen to our episode on Dead Reckoning. But thank you so much for bringing that up, Adam. Certainly makes the film feel incredibly relevant, both Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning today on that particular topic, which is still very much in the news and is kind of a steamroller. We're just going to keep hearing more and more and more about intuitive and generative and creative AI. But other closing thoughts on the movie, Gino?
Well, a big closing thought is, and we did talk about this before, how good of a character Gabriel is, played by Morales. Earlier Adam had said something about, it's not known for its villains, but there's been a few examples. Hoffman was one, and this one, I didn't think we got enough of him in this film, quite honestly. I would have loved, sure, he's in the big scenes with the plane and stuff, and he's there, but I don't think we got enough of Gabriel in this film. I love Morales' villain. That's like in my top 10 now of villains in movies.
Yeah. So, Karen, would we be able to skip our next break and then we can just run right into my next segment here?
We sure can.
Okay, thank you. Karen filling in for Angela today, listeners. You may be familiar with her from her morning show, The Blend. So thank you for confirming that for me, Karen.
Not a problem.
I'd like to cap the show each week with other movies that we've been watching. So, Adam, are there another movie or two that you've seen over the last couple of weeks that you'd like to talk about very briefly and share with our listeners?
Just any movie I could bring up that I saw and shout out.
Yeah. Anything that caught your interest, maybe something you liked, or maybe something you weren't particularly fond of. But yeah, anything else that you watched over the last week or two?
New or just throwback?
Whatever you want to mention.
Okay, I would love to shout out my favorite adaptation of Treasure Island. And my favorite Muppet movie, personally, I recently rewatched Muppet Treasure Island. And gosh, is this movie one of my favorites of all time. I think that one thing that makes it stand above the rest, in my opinion, is Tim Curry's performance. I think he's just like a human Muppet himself. And so I think he fits right in. Whereas like Michael Caine in the Christmas Carol one, which is also a great performance, but for an opposite reason. He's like very stoic, very human. And so whereas Tim Curry's very animated. And I love the songs in it. And I think specifically compared to other cinematic adaptations of the Treasure Island story, I feel like they nail the dynamic between Long John Silver and the boy, Jim, I forgot his name, Jim. But Jim Hawkins,
Jim Hawkins.
I love Muppet Treasure Island. The first one that came to mind.
That's a wonderful mention, and Muppet Treasure Island is one I probably need to go back and rewatch because it's been a pretty long time since I've seen it last. So thanks for bringing it up. No, whether it's new or it's a movie that is came out a long time ago, all are welcomed on the show because, like you, I often find myself rewatching films I've seen before, TV shows I've seen before. So no, very much Muppet Treasure Island very much fits right in vein with what we're here to talk about in our cinematic conversations. How about Gino? What about you? Anything that you'd like to mention over the last week or two?
So far, taking this one aside, the best film I think I've seen so far this year has actually been the Marvel Thunderbolts. I mean, Marvel's been sinking and like going down for the third time of late, but I think this was a nice turnaround. And for the same reasons that we like the Mission Impossible thing, they got back to the characters interacting and the bantering and all that stuff that I think makes at least you want to hang out with these guys, even if the story is not exactly that great. You can just have fun hanging out with them, and so I like that. I'm hoping that this is a good pretend for the upcoming Fantastic Four and other things coming up, this summer. So yeah, the Thunderbolts movie was a good movie that I thought was a great return to just let's have some fun with these superheroes. Let's not take everything so seriously, and concentrate on characters as much, if not more so, than the special effects.
One I saw is coming out from IFC this week. I don't know if you guys are following the news on it or not. But it's Dangerous Animals, which is a.
Oh yeah.
So I don't. Have either one of you seen Dangerous Animals?
I have not.
Okay. So without getting into any spoilers, I found it sufficiently fun. It's the kind of horror movie that is fun enough and entertaining once, in my opinion, but not one that commands a rewatch. The premise is fantastic, though. A serial killer kidnaps young tourists, usually young women, and feeds them to sharks as he uses an old VHS camcorder to capture the victim's demise. And so this movie takes inspiration from Shark Night from 2011, which I'll touch on here just really quickly. But with Dangerous Animals, I found it took inspiration from Shark Night, Cabin by the Lake, and even a little Silence of the Lambs. In fact, there's a scene that is right out of Silence of the Lambs, and it's done with taste. It wasn't one of those vomit-inducing movie references that's just in there. Like, remember this movie? It works really well within the film. But between the truncated first and third acts, the protracted second act, just for me anyway, foiled any tension or suspense. But if you enjoy shark movies, you may want to check out Dangerous Animals. It's coming out this week. And then if one that I saw because of this movie was Shark Night, which is also kind of a commentary on surveillance culture and fake documentaries with sharks, and there's a little Shark Week in there as well. But we are approaching the end of the show. Before we go, though, Gino, Adam, where can our listeners find out more information about you and your work? Gino, start with you.
Well, you can go to GeSassani.com for music, and we just dropped our first single. We have a new album coming out in a couple of weeks.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I'm going to be passing the single along to Tom Hoots of Sound Sessions to review it, and we can get you on his show on Tuesdays. Adam, website, social media handles, or anything else so our listeners may want to follow up with you?
Gotcha, yes. I am on YouTube. I do hard reviews. That's hello, Adam Ryan Donato. That's me, reviews. If you like me, just ranting about how much I love movies so much. I also am a contributor for Disappointment Media. That's a website, disappointmentmedia.com. And other stuff. I do Adam Stevens Show. That's where I talk in a longer form about movies. Movies are my entire life. Please go watch movies.
Well, listeners, if you missed any of today's episode or to listen to past shows from WKGC, we are now on a podcatcher near you. So look for WKGC on your podcast service of choice. With that, Karen, let me know that we are all out of time for today. Stay tuned for Jazz in a Minor Key with Walter Hale coming up next, followed by All Things Considered starting at 3 o'clock. So tune in again next week, same time, same place, for more Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC.